So, thank you. That's James Beard. James Beard. Are you here, James? Oh, there he is. This is my last month to be up here as president. And every month I would invite somebody to come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. In fact, our first, Nancy Hendricks was our very first Pledge of Allegiance leader. Remember that?
I do.
And then Ed Fisher. Where's Ed? Is Ed here today? Butch and okay. And Butch, I want to thank all of you all each month coming up here, leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And today, James Beard will be up here. James, you want to come on up and lead us, please?
Please join me.
Stand, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, James. Thank you all. And we have the minutes. You all received the minutes. We need to approve those minutes as read. We have,
I so moved.
thank you. Do we have a second? Okay, Margie seconded. All those in favor of approving the minutes as read, say aye. Aye. Thank you, they've been approved. Thank you. Now, we're going to have an announcement from Taylor Kakabon. She's the program coordinator of the Literacy Council of the Washingtons. Come on up here, Taylor.
Hello. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Literacy Council. We're a nonprofit. We help adults learn how to read, how to improve certain aspects of their life with literacy. And we're having our annual Read Between the Lines fundraiser. It's going to be on February 20th. That's a Thursday. It'll be at 6 p.m. We're going to have a local author, Stephen Cook, come and talk about his book. And I have it here. It's quite a long title, so I wanted to have it ready. It's From Almeda to Zilphia, Arkansas Women Who Transformed American Popular Song. So I think you guys probably have some copies of the library. So we're also going to be doing a raffle for a trip to Cabo San Lucas. Yeah. So those will be available for purchase in person only, because that's how raffles work here. So you can purchase those at our office at 119 Hobson or at Black Ribbon Books downtown. So watch our Facebook page for more updates about that, or if you get our email newsletter, or if you don't, let me know and I can get you that to see when you can buy some tickets and all that. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Taylor. Do you need to be up here? Okay. Now we're going to have our swearing in ceremony for our board officers. Our new president, Ron Fuller. Ron, come up here, please. Sadly, our vice president is home in bed with the flu. He sounded horrible. I just spoke with him. Our secretary, Elaine. Oh, yeah, can you come here? And then our treasurer is in Washington. Okay. Our new board member, Jane Lacefield. Miss Jane, will you come up here, please? Another new board member is Paul, and he's trying desperately to fix his technical problem. So we're going to do this real fast. Okay. Yeah. I solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute my responsibilities as an officer and board member of the Garland County Historical Society. Say yes.
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Okay, you are now new officers and board members of the Garland County Historical Society. Thank you very much.
Photo opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Now, before you start, I have one thing I want to do, and then Ron's going to take over the meeting. He's our new president.
That's what they say.
Yeah, he's our new president. But I do have, if we have some folks going off the board, one of them is here today, and that's Julie Nix. She has been just a wonderful, she's been a terrific board member, and I have just a little gift here for her, and thanks her service, that we're not letting her go. She's busy in the community, but we love her.
I'm not letting any of them
Yeah.
go.
So this is for Julie. Thank you so much.
It's been a wonderful experience. If anybody wants to put their hand up.
What, 6 years?
Tower.
8, 7 years? Board member.
2, 4, 6,
2, 4, 6.
6 plus.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
And now here's Ron Fuller, our new president.
My first task is rather a fun one here, which is to present our outgoing president a gift.
Thank you.
Very well.
This is just what I wanted. I asked for Historical Society books.
Dig a little deeper.
And you can get these at the Historical Society Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Yeah, dig a little deeper. Oh, I love this. Look at this bookmark. It says Julia Biddy Martin, President, 2023-24. GCI, just thank y'all so much. Thank you.
Well, I can't tell you how honored I am to have had my arm twisted up behind my back by these departing lovely people to kind of try to build on what they did and what a lot of other people over the years have done for this organization. And for everybody out here, this organization needs your help if we are to continue success that so many other people have brought us to today. If you're not a member of this group, Lord, we need you as a member of this group. And memberships, individual, are cheap. And not only that, but we need you to continue to go to the wonderful meetings, to be a part of all of the activities that are planned throughout the year. Encourage your friends. History is not taught very much in school, as we know. And as you go down the line, Arkansas history and the history of a particular city gets pretty thin down there at the bottom in terms of what is really taught. But young people do need to know what brought them to the state that they're in today, if you could get them off their pads and iPhones and what have you. But we need every one of you. We need you to be a recruiter for this organization to help us continue the great success that we've had in the past. And I want to do another round of applause for Liz, for Biddy, for Julie, for all these other volunteers that have done so much for us. And I believe, Liz, you're going to come up now.
Well, how we doing? Okay.
We ready?
Well, we still have a few technical difficulties that they're working on, but while they're working on them, I'd like to invite you to our February program, which is the third Tuesday, February the 18th. And our speaker is going to be Park Ranger Kane West. Now, I think some of you have heard him give programs before. He is a delightful young man and a wonderful presenter. I think you'll enjoy his program. He's going to explore how Hot Springs fits into the overall picture of healthcare in the United States and tell about some interesting things. Like, did you know there used to be free bathhouse on Bathhouse Road? Well, this is a very well-educated crowd. I bet a lot of people don't know. And he'll explain all about how that came to be and how it worked. And he said the question he always dreads, he always gets is fine, there one now. So don't ask him that. And today we're very delighted to have another great author with her. Dr. Sam Taggart is here. Sam, you want to stand up? You may have heard him at a program that he gave for us about his wonderful book, Country Doctors of Arkansas. Now today, we're delighted to have Ray Hanley with us. Now, Ray grew up in Malvern, but we can kind of claim him too because he was actually born at St. Joe's. And I'm sure he spent a lot of time in Hot Springs when he was growing up. After graduating from Ouachita Baptist University in 1973, he started a long and distinguished career in the healthcare field. Just a couple of highlights from a very long resume. He was state Medicaid director for several years and also CEO and president of the Arkansas Foundation for Medical Care, from which he retired in 2022. Just a few of his awards include Arkansas Children's Hospital Man of the Year, Friend of Children Award from Arkansas Advocates, and Women and Children's Champion Award from UAMS. Well, now that would be a full life for anybody, but not Ray. Ray's not anyone. He's had a parallel career as a historian. In fact, he's the most published historian in Arkansas history. The Arkansas Democrat-Gazette has printed his feature, Arkansas Postcard Past, 5 days a week since 1986. Can you imagine submitting, you ever had a deadline? 5 days a week since 1986, that's amazing. And he has 20 books in print and is an occasional feature writer for the Democrat-Gazette. Altogether, he's published more than 16,000 photographs and postcards in his many projects, and he's going to share some of them with us today. We're very confident, and we're really delighted to have him here today. And that's all I got.
Well, thank you. We're still waiting on the technical.
All right. So just give us a minute here.
Okay, this is better than nothing. This is why the library needs a remodel, because of the projector. Okay.
Picture's clearer on there.
I guess I can see it on the little screen. Well, thank you. It's quite a crowd today on a cold day. You know, as Liz says, I was born here in Hot Springs on the 5th floor over St. Joseph's. When my daughters were little, I tried to tell them there was a brass plaque out front denoting that. They believed me for about 2 minutes, I think. But, I have published about 16,000 postcards, and I suspect close to 3,000 of those are from Hot Springs. So, of all the millions of postcards that have been published, and then in Arkansas, I suspect no place published as many as Hot Springs did. And they tell a real story. The picture on the front, sometimes what people wrote on the back, that I'm sure that if they'd thought about it, they didn't want the postman reading that, but that's the way it happened. And I chose to focus on this, on the disasters that have beset Hot Springs. And I'm not sure any place in Arkansas has been as visited by fires, floods, and even a few tornadoes as Hot Springs. And it's certainly changed the landscape. And I may need a little help seeing this in the dark. Just a second.
We've got
Alright.
a flashlight if you'd like, sir. Where you got one?
I got it. Anyway, fire, wind, and rain, the history of disasters in Hot Springs. The fire demon. I don't have to tell any of you how frequently that is visited. We're going to talk about the worst fire in history. And the first big fire was actually in 1877, and there were only a couple of photographs made of it. And it actually burned about 25% of the city, which then it was Bathhouse Road was lined up on then Hot Springs Creek, which was open, burned most of the bathhouses and the hotels. The worst fire in state history. And I'm going backwards. The fire department, it's probably, before we talk about the fire, it's probably helpful to look at the fire department, because you can imagine when a big hotel caught on fire, big buildings, putting out the fire with that fire department was probably a bit of a challenge. The 1905 fire was the next big one after the 1878 one. That was the worst fire to date. Burned the Moody Hotel, the courthouse, the Jewish synagogue, even the sheriff's house burned down in that one. 400 buildings, $2 million in damage. It started at the Grand Central Hotel, which was at Crown and Chapel, Old Derelict Hotel, 25 dead, thousands of people homeless. And this is a picture from it. You can see that brave fireman up there on the rubble with his hose. And this is a picture of the fire department about that time. Probably the entire fire department in their group picture.
Right, excuse me, how big a town was Hot Springs?
In 1910, the population of Hot Springs, I believe, and Liz can fill me in, but I think it was around 10,000. But you obviously had thousands and thousands more visitors that would pile in on top of that. But I think the year-round population was around 10,000. So, and the fire was hard on churches. You can see the Methodist Church here was one of the victims. And as the other disasters would happen over the next century, churches sometimes got in their path. That church had been built in 1890. You can see over the door and what was left of it. The courthouse and the jail burned. And then there's always, this was the worst fire until the next fire, which was the worst fire. And the 1913 one was and still is the worst fire to set Hot Springs. So a century later, we haven't gotten worse, at least. Fire department here had gotten a little better. You can see we got a little fire truck, still got our fire wagon. And that was at the auditorium over across from where the convention center is today. Still horse-drawn for a lot of it. But the fire itself started in a cottage when an iron that I think was fueled by charcoal fell over. And by the time it was over, $10 million in damage, 2,500 homeless. The population had passed 10,000, which, back during the Civil War, it was only 200. So it was a first-class city by then. And somebody in one of the tourist guides described Hot Springs in 1913 that in a poor state, it was a rare island of wealth and modernity. But the cottage where the fire started belonged to a lady named Alma Matlocks, which was in a parking lot, which is now where the convention center is. And that fire, and you can see this is about where it started here. And there it's spreading. See the train parked there because the fire is headed up and down Malvern Avenue in both directions, headed to the depot. Wasn't a lot of water pressure, which kind of, I thought of that when I read about the Los Angeles fires, that they ran out of water pressure. Well, Hot Springs Fire Department ran out of water pressure for this pretty quickly. It didn't help when the electric plant burned. The depot, the Iron Mountain Depot, is in its path. So they cabled Little Rock and telegram, and Little Rock sent down a trainload of firefighters and equipment. The problem is the hoses and the equipment that Little Rock brought wouldn't fit the Hot Springs hydrants. So it was kind of hard to pump a lot of water with what Little Rock brought. Diamond Joe, his house, sanitarium, he's noted for building the narrow gauge railroad from Malvern to Hot Springs. This was his house, and you'll see it again in a minute. The crowd out on Malvern Avenue looking down at the flames. And here's Diamond Joe's house that you saw back here. I'm sorry, in the dark, I have trouble going the right direction with this. There's his house, and there was his house before the fire. So, quite a loss. Churches, in the 1905 fire, churches were victims. This church was at, I think, Central and Olive, the Grand Methodist Church. Huge stained glass window of the Ascension there in the front. Just beautiful church. The fire's headed for the church. The fire burned the church, along with the high school that's back up the hill behind it, which was supposed to be, was built as fireproof. It wasn't. And you can see in the next picture about where the fire was stopped on Central Avenue there. But in the distance, it looks, you've seen pictures of towns and villages in World War I, and this is what it looks like to me as just a war zone. There's not much left. And I think where the church is now at Central and Olive is just a parking lot. And that's another view looking down Central at the church. And again, it looks like a war zone. The church again, and people speculating. One of the victims was the Moody Hotel that had actually been built back after the 1905 fire. So they built a new hotel again. 8 years later, the Moody Hotel went down. And there's the ruins of that. The courthouse burned. There's the shell of it. But perhaps the most tragic, biggest loss was the Park Hotel, which was out Malvern Avenue, I think about where Grand meets us, Malvern Avenue. Huge hotel, lots of gardens, several hundred rooms, just out on the streetcar line. It was further removed from downtown than the, like the Arlington and the others. There's the fire getting to the Park Hotel. They couldn't save it. The Park Hotel after the fire. The electric plant was out, so the trolleys didn't work. So they brought out some mules and hitched them to the trolley cars for people to get around town. And I suspect part of these were tourists who weren't going to be denied a trip around town. Even a stagecoach. And you can see, again, the ruins of the church and the high school there behind the stagecoach. Looking south from the Iron Mountain Depot, which was also lost. And then we come to a hotel that survived the 1905 fire and the 1913 fire. And that's the Arlington, which had been built, I think it opened in 1893 at Central and crossed Fountain Street from where the Arlington is today in what's Arlington Park. The Chicago Press, when this hotel opened, they compared it to the Palmer House in Chicago. 5-story red brick, Spanish Renaissance style, 300 rooms, 650 feet of footage on Central Avenue. In 1910, you could rent a room in the Arlington here for somewhere between $4 and $8 a night, depending on the amenities that you wanted. And Sam, you probably liked in some hotels with rates like that. I don't know, but and that's another view of how it looked on Central Avenue. Walking past the bathhouses, the Twin Towers sticking up. The fire started in the basement, apparently an electrical fire. And the hotel management told the guests, "Don't worry, we got it contained. It's not going to be an issue. We'll have it out shortly." William Pinkerton, the famed detective, was sitting out on the porch smoking a cigar, and he believed they have it out, so he didn't go get the stuff. Mrs. Joe T. Robinson, the senator's wife, was a guest at the hotel then. And this was taken, I suspect, from probably the top of the Rockefeller Hotel up on Central and Park. Fire department's doing their best, but you can see the fire is overtaking the hotel. The Army-Navy hospital sent personnel down to try to help evacuate the hotel. The employees with gas masks who were going up and down the hall trying to find the guests and get them out. And the newspaper coverage was interesting because it gave a lot of credit to the black employees at the Arlington Hotel. And those of you that know much about the bathhouses in the hotel at that time, a lot of the employees were black. Now, they couldn't use the bathhouses in the hotels, but the hotels and bathhouses depended on these black employees to run the business. And one black employee named Gus, he was described in the paper as a hall boy. But he got credit. One disabled man in a wheelchair, he put a wet sheet over his head and pushed him down the hall out of the hotel and saved his life. And again, the crowds were just starting to gather in front of the hotel, and the Waukesha over on the right, which is gone now, the Dugan Stewart building you can see on the right. And I'm sure probably at that point they still hoped they would save the hotel. Bigger and bigger crowds in the street. And the next day, it's obviously gone. That's all that's standing. This spans 650 feet of Central Avenue. There was one casualty, and sadly, it was a fireman who a wall, I think, fell in on. George Ford. He was the father of 7. He was 42 years old. The owners of the Arlington Hotel ponied up the money and paid for his funeral. He's buried at the Center Hill Cemetery. When it was all totaled up, the loss was estimated to be $1 million, which was a lot of money, you know, in that time. Insurance covered half of it. The owners said, we're going to rebuild, and they started work almost immediately, but across Fountain Street, which is where, of course, the Arlington is now. And did have a new hotel built in a year. So, but I've often wondered what Central Avenue would look like today if this hotel had survived. More ruins. And that's a shot I took at some point where the hotel used to be, which is the Arlington Lawn across the street. We had another fire here in 1928 on Central. And then came the Great Northern Hotel, which was the budget hotel of its day at the end of Malvern Avenue there. You couldn't afford the Arlington and the Majestic and those, you probably went to the Great Northern, which had, by 1946, had been around for more than 50 years. Rooms were about $2, even in 1946. And it billed itself as being near both depots, and it certainly was an easy walking distance of both depots. Construction worker, 1946, came in with a 6-pack of beer and went to sleep on the sofa and with a lit cigarette and turned the hotel down. One guest died. 10 other businesses that were lost that were housed at the bottom of the hotel, the city cab, Maddox Liquor, all gone. And again, you know, the firemen, they show up and they do their best, but they couldn't save the Great Northern Hotel. And that's the day after. It's just a smoking hole in the ground. You can see what was in the post office in the background. The Eastman Hotel rises to the left. And then the Moody Hotel. Now, the Moody Hotel that burned down in 1905, it burned down in 1913, but they built it back. And it lasted another 60 years until it caught on fire out on Washita. And this is what it looked like. It had its own bathhouse. Just a really impressive building that I remember myself seeing it. And this is probably in the late 1950s. Set back up on a rise, own bathhouse. And that's after the fire that started actually in a furniture store next door and spread to the hotel. And it was at 400 Washita, and I'm trying to remember, there's a bank or something there, Liz will know, but and then the Majestic Hotel, which I actually, you know, got to stay in a couple of times on business. But I think opened up, I think, in 1902 on Park Avenue. And it was one of the, what was called the four great hotels in Hot Springs. You know, the Majestic, the Arlington, the Park, and the Eastman. Each of the floors on that hotel were said to open onto the back of the mountain. And it's one of the big four hotels. It was really, had a central place in the tourism business. One of the postcards here, somebody at the Majestic sent a card, and they wrote on the back, find Hot Springs a nice place, but society is bad. It's all Democrats. So, again, the history is not always on the picture on the front. Sometimes it's on what people wrote on the back. Well, you know, the hotel was closed for years, and there was obviously off and on plans to restore it, and there seemed to be some serious plans to do it until it caught fire one night in February 27, 2014, and burned up, lost. And that's a picture of the fire. And all the water and everything, trying to save it. That's the day after. I was working on a book at the time for the University of Arkansas Press called Hot Springs Past and Present. And I had a present shot at the hotel, and obviously didn't take into account this. So I called up the Fayetteville. Well, we're not quite done. We'll stop the presses. So I had to go over and take a picture of this for the book. So other blazes, the fires didn't stop. This one, which was, I guess it's the parking garage for the Arlington Hotel now, was a Cadillac garage next to the DeSoto Hotel. It caught fire. Over on Ouachita, we had another fire. And parts of those buildings are still there, parts of them are not. And then the Best Motel had a fire, and they're trying to salvage the sign. This is the hotel, I think, Liz, it's now restored, and a really nice tourist court. And I actually stayed there back in the fall. I rode my bicycle from Little Rock to Hot Springs and spent a night in this restored tourist court. So, you know, fire, wind, and rain, and the wind, they actually, a century ago, they called tornadoes cyclones, which obviously is a tropical storm. We know better of tornadoes now, and an entirely different cause, but they were cyclones. And cyclones visited Hot Springs several times, and the photographers were always out there to take pictures. And this was in 1915, one of them there. 4 were killed and 12 were hurt in this, and it was part of the worst tornadoes that were ever hit Arkansas at the time, that scattered over several counties. The Mays garage on Central was blown away, but not the cars. And this is Carrie Johnson, which is the wife of the mailman. She was blown through the front window of her house and unharmed. And we all read these things about the fickle nature of that. There was a barrel with 2 hens and eggs blown onto somebody's porch. He kept the barrel and the eggs hatched. So, and more victims. A dead horse. 1916 tornado. And the skating rink in the 1916 fire was wrecked by the tornado. The Arlington, the racetrack, Oaklawn, took some damage there from this tornado. The Eastman Hotel in 1923 was damaged by the tornadoes. And again, the story of churches and disasters. The Episcopal Church, which I believe was out on Grand, this is it. Built the late 1800s. This was it after the 1924 tornado. Destroyed it. Interesting enough, the altar survived. There's a picture that somebody took of it in the ruins, and the picture of the Ascension. And then we come to floods, which, if you've lived in Hot Springs as long as a lot of you have, you're not a stranger to floods. Because of the confluence of the valleys here around Central, coming off the parallel mountains, it rains hard, the water ends up downtown. Taking a bath, 1910, down on Central. The young man posed. The patient horse is standing there with his buggy. Taking a bath again. They got their slickers on. The horse looks more posed than they do. And looking down Central, you can see the trolley cars are stopped and people are coming out of their flooded stores. And actually, a lot of them had basements at the time, and they ended up full of water, of course.
Ray, do they talk much about how long these floods last when they happen?
You know, just a few hours and the water goes down. The current and things that did enough damage. There's more record. I'll talk about the 1923 flood in a minute, but you know, it rose quickly and it went down quickly, but not before it did a lot of damage.
Is this before or after the underground tunnel down Central?
I think this would have been after.
After?
Yeah. But you can see how strong the current is. You can see it hitting the wheels on the car there. And again, you can see how swift this was. This is a 1927 flood. But the 1923 flood, which happened on May the 14th, 1923, 10 inches of rain had fell in just a few short hours. And much of it came right down Central Avenue. This was taken the day after. You can see the cars piled up in front of the Ozark bathhouse. There were something like 100 automobiles that were swept down Central by the current. And the story is Hill Wheatley, who at one point I think owned a big part of downtown Hot Springs and sadly tore down a lot of it. But the story was he was in a car on Central Avenue and his car got washed for several blocks down Central. And it lodged against the light pole briefly. And he climbed out of the car and climbed the light pole, and then the car was swept on down. So his life was saved because his car got stuck on the light pole and he climbed out. There was a story of a small boy that was found stuck in a magnolia tree on Bathhouse Road that survived. But there was anywhere from 4 to 9 feet of water that came down Central Avenue for this. So a lot of water. And again, you know, the next day, the photographers are out, and these photographers, they like to sell postcards. So they would go out and take all these pictures after a fire, a flood, a tornado, and then they would rush back to their studio and they would be printing postcards and hawking those.
Ray, it might be advantageous for some of the folks that these storms which came in, a lot of them seem to hit over the end of, back over the mountain, back toward Lake Ouachita and came over through Whittington. And of course, Whittington Creek is there. And that water came down Whittington at 4, 5, 6 feet deep. The creek was filled up. And then the same thing happened on Park Avenue. There's a giant creek that's still underground up there. When those two, the confluence of those down at came up out of the ground, washed streets up right there at the intersection of Central and Park and Whittington, and just created these little minor waves of water. I was in one in '58. that came down Woodington. I
That
was
explains
10
it.
years old. I brought it, I helped bring it, but the water that you could see from that was just colossal.
That's amazing.
The surge that came up.
Well, you know, there were stories of survival and then deaths. There were apparently a lot of cars washed down the road with women and kids screaming and yelling, and somehow most survived. There was one death, a woman named Katie Christensen, who I think was the wife of a cook at the Army Navy. She died when her long hair got tangled up around the steering wheel and her car was submerged, and she died. And again, the aftermath, the pavement was peeled up. The water was so strong, it peeled up the asphalt in the street. And I think that building in the background is Maxine's bar, I believe. And again, you see the sidewalk and the streets are all tore up. The Royal Theater there. Somebody furnished rooms and light housekeeping on the sign there, and these guys might have been staying there. Central Avenue looking north, and this was a pharmacy there at the corner that's gone now, a parking lot now. But you can see how the power of that water to rip up the blacktop. Same here in front of the bank building. This is this whole block is gone now. Hill Whittington, Wheatley tore it all down, and now it's a little park with his name on it. And I'm not sure how long it took to settle the insurance claims for all this. There in front of the Ohio Club, you can see their sign sticking out, and all the piled up cars. And then there were fires down at the Marquette Hotel on down Central. There was actually a fire involved that destroyed it. So you had floods and fires going on at the same time, and a real mess to clean up the next day. And this is the last photo, and I thought it's kind of helpful to end on this. The poor man is there in his drugstore and looking out, and you just got to think, he's saying, what am I going to do now? His store's been wrecked, the shelves are falling over, and he's just standing there in the ruins. So, and with that, I'm done with pictures, and if anybody's got any questions, if I can't answer them, I'm sure somebody else in the room can. Yes, sir.
The fire of 1963 at Royal Baptist Church, the 22nd of December at 4:45 a.m. in the morning. You have any records of that? I have.
I've read about it, and I think that was arson. I think that was intentionally set, wasn't it?
That's what I was trying to hear you say.
Yes. So I didn't include that because this was about natural disasters.
Okay.
But I know the story of that. It was a black church.
That's correct. Go ahead.
And was set on fire by some, hateful, mean,
I have
bigoted
history on
people.
it at some time when we will have time to hear it. I have it with me now, so I'm a historian on that particular matter. If I could ever share it with my brothers and sisters.
Good.
And you are my brothers and sisters.
Well, I do know the story, and like I say, I didn't include it in this because I was only focused on natural disasters. But that is a tragic chapter in city.
This is the first time I've heard someone publicly tell the truth that you just told, other than what the fire chief told me recently, that it did not start from an overheated stove, as I found in print, and now I can't find that in print.
Well, I've been reading Arkansas history for most of my life, so I tend to file away things and, for whatever it's worth.
And there are some beautiful postcards that are still available and around that you can buy that have pictures of that church.
Yes.
It was a beautiful church.
Okay.
Yes.
I was curious about like that fire in 1913.
Mhm.
How long did that fire go? How many days or?
You know, I think it went most of the night. It started, I think, in the afternoon and burned through the night, and I think it was probably the next day before they finally had it settled. Because, again, they didn't have much water pressure, and the fire department was ill-equipped to deal with something like that. Yes, sir.
So Ray, you didn't include ice storms. Like I remember the December 2000 one,
Yeah.
and there were probably worse ones than that.
Oh, I'm sure there was, but, you know, I just focus on what somebody put on a postcard, I guess. And ice storms, you know, I've actually seen postcards of ice storms, but not in High Springs. So, anyway, anybody else? Yes.
Well, I remember in the 60s, this must have been in the early 60s, there was another flood in downtown Hot Springs.
There was, and there was the last one, big one was 1990, I think, as recently as 1990, 13 inches of rain
2008.
washed through.
Now,
So,
there's still some YouTube video out there of that flood,
bet.
if you'll Google that up.
after they quit making postcards, the floods, I just kind of didn't keep up with it. Sam?
Do you have any, you didn't comment on this, but I know there were significant parts of Arkansas where up until the beginning of the 19th century, early 20th century, the kitchen wasn't in the house.
No.
It was outside.
Yeah.
Because of fires, because of the fire potential. Did you see anything? I didn't hear you mention anything about house fires or fires.
You know, I've read that and knew that, Sam, but I just haven't seen much on that as far as, you know, postcards or photographs go. Liz?
And with that 1913 fire too, they had these shingles on the roofs of buildings, which were built very close together, houses and buildings, and hot, dry conditions. Everything was very dried out. And those shingles started spinning and flying, and they just were like missiles, spreading the fire
like
from
wood
building to
shakes?
building. And after that, they changed the fire codes and how you built your roofs and, but that's also, you know, that fire explains why a lot of buildings in some areas, you'll see buildings that date from 1914 on, but the earlier ones are gone.
And I guess what doesn't burn down, I just hope we can keep people from tearing down, because there's been far too much of that. But anyway, if there are no more questions, I appreciate, yes, sir.
Tell us a little bit how you got started collecting postcards.
You know, I was in college, which is a long time ago, and I bought a few at the flea market, and then I bought a few more. My brother got interested in it, and we both started collecting postcards. And that was in the early 70s, and today I've got about 40,000 Arkansas postcards. Wow. I bought the biggest fireproof gun safe I could find and converted it to hold them. So, you know, if I could do this for a living, I probably would have, but I'd have starved to death. And so I had to run a healthcare company and do some other things to make a living.
What, I know Liz mentioned the number of books that you have. Are they still in print?
They are. There's 4 on Hot Springs, and they're all on Amazon. Some of them are at the Park Visitor Center, I know. Some of them are Walgreens and places like that. But they're all on Amazon, I think. And I'm working on one now on El Dorado in Union County that'll be out late spring. Diane, my wife, edits them, or otherwise I would have probably not got past the first book. But so yeah, they're all on Amazon, and a lot of them are at the local bookstore too. So
Ray, we really appreciate
Well, thank you.
being here today.
President,
Knowing full well that you don't have enough postcards, and a lot of them are in boxes, and you kind of have to go through. We decided to give you a lot of postcards all in one place. Thank you. So, And he has every one of those postcards.
Thank you.
You're welcome, you're welcome. We sincerely appreciate everybody coming today and Ray's participation. Paul, we appreciate y'all doing your
Yes.
part. And I had failed to mention one of our other board members who unfortunately didn't come today, but she's rolling off our board, Carol Minster, who has done a great job. Thank you, and all of you go forth and spread the word about this great society. Thank you.